Most people who reach round 7 make one specific mistake. They bring the same weapon that saved them in every previous round: the grip, the push, the refusal to let go, into a test that requires the exact opposite, and it costs them everything. Not because the vision was wrong, not because they were not chosen, but because round 7 is not like the others. Every test before this one came from outside you: people, circumstances, and results. Silence, all of it external. But round 7 comes from within, and the way you have been surviving until now will not work here. Tonight I am going to show you what round 7 is actually asking of you, and I am going to give you something I believe was placed in your path for exactly this moment. Before we go any further, stay with me until the end of this video, because by the time we finish, you will understand exactly why you survived every round that was designed to break you, what the final round is actually testing inside you right now, and the specific shift that has been prepared for this exact moment in your journey. Everything in this video builds towards something real. Do not leave before we get there. Now, let us go back to the beginning. When you first set out on this path, you were not alone. There were hundreds of people around you carrying the same fire you were carrying, maybe thousands. All of them felt the call. All of them had seen something in themselves that most people around them could not see. All of them said the words, "This time is different." And for a while, for that first bright season, they believed it. Then round 1 arrived. Round 1 never announces itself. It does not come as a dramatic test or a visible enemy. It comes quietly, as the morning when the feeling is gone. The warmth that made everything feel possible, the sense that you were finally on the right path, finally moving in the right direction, it simply fades. And what remains in its place is just the work, stripped of the glow that made it feel sacred, just the ordinary, unglamorous, unremarkable task of continuing on a day that does not feel special at all. And the question appears, do you go forward without the feeling, or do you wait until it comes back? Most people waited. They told themselves they just needed rest, needed a reset, needed to reconnect with why they started. And those are not bad instincts. But the feeling does not come back on a schedule. It comes back through movement, not through waiting. And so, the days of waiting became weeks, and the weeks became a quiet drift back toward the familiar, and nobody made a single decision to quit. They just stopped showing up, and, eventually, the fire went out on its own. You did not wait. Round 2 came from closer in. It came from the people who loved you, and that is what made it so difficult to hold your ground against it. Strangers doubting you is one thing. Strangers do not know you. But the people who have watched you from the beginning, who have seen you fail before and recover, who hold in their memory every time things did not go the way you planned, when those people raise an eyebrow, the doubt they plant is specific. It is tailored to your exact history. It knows which wounds are still tender. The looks. The gentle questions that were really warnings dressed in concern. The conversations that started with, "I just want to make sure you are being realistic," and ended with you carrying something heavier than when you began. The love in it is real. That is what makes it so hard. They are not trying to stop you. They just cannot see what you see. And carrying a vision that the people closest to you cannot see is its own particular kind of loneliness. Not the dramatic loneliness of rejection, but the quieter ache of being seen as someone other than who you are becoming. You carried the vision anyway. Round 3 was solitude. Not the temporary solitude of a hard season, but the permanent kind. The realization that this road is yours to walk, and yours alone. Friendships that fell away, not through conflict, but through divergence, through the slow-growing distance between a person who is transforming and a world that is staying the same. Conversations that used to feel natural now feel like translation work. Rooms full of people where you feel the most alone, not because anything is wrong with anyone there, but because you have crossed into a territory that they have not yet chosen to enter. Most people turn back at round 3, not because they lost faith in the destination, but because the cost of solitude is something nobody prepared them for. We are built for belonging. We are built to need the confirmation of people who understand us, and when that confirmation is absent for long enough, the mind starts asking dangerous questions. Was I wrong about who I am? Is the path real, or did I imagine it? You chose the path over the comfort of being understood. Round 4 broke things. Real things. The plan that should have worked did not work. The timeline you had drawn out in your mind collapsed. The effort you gave, and you gave real effort, you know you did produce results that did not match what the effort deserved. And that is a particular kind of pain that goes beyond frustration. It is the pain of faith tested at the level of evidence. You believed and you worked, and the work did not produce visible proof that the belief was justified. This is the round that turns many people into cynics. Not angry people cynics. People who continue moving but stop believing that the movement matters. Who go through the motions with the fire gone from their eyes. Who have decided, somewhere beneath the surface, that they were foolish to expect anything other than this. That the universe does not reward faith with results. That the whole thing was a story they told themselves when they were young enough to believe in stories. You did not become a cynic. Round 5 was the cruelest version of hope. Because round 5 gave you close. It showed you the edge of the thing you had been working toward. Opportunities that materialized and then dissolved. Moments where everything aligned and then something shifted and the alignment fell apart. The conversation that went almost perfectly. The door that opened a crack and then closed. The season where you could smell where you were going, close enough to feel real, close enough that turning back felt impossible, far enough that arriving still seemed out of reach. There is a specific torture to the near miss. Despair is survivable, despair is clear. But hope followed immediately by disappointment, and then hope again, and then disappointment again. That cycle wears something down that raw suffering cannot reach. It wears down the willingness to hope at all. And eventually, a person begins to protect themselves from hope, the way they would protect themselves from anything that has hurt them repeatedly. You refuse to stop hoping. Round 6 was silence from above. Not the silence of empty space, the silence of withdrawal. The season when the signs stopped coming. When the prayers felt like they were landing nowhere. When you had been sustained for years by a sense of connection to something larger than yourself, a sense of being guided and held and confirmed in the rightness of your path. And then, that sense simply went away. And in its absence was nothing but the echo of your own voice asking, am I still on the path, or did I wander off it somewhere and never notice? This is the round that breaks people who survived everything else, because a person can survive external opposition, a person can survive doubt and isolation and failure and even near misses. But the withdrawal of divine confirmation, the felt sense that you are seen, known, guided, chosen, the loss of that is something most people are not built to endure for long. The silence makes the whole journey feel like a story you told yourself. Like the call was your own wishful thinking, dressed in sacred language. You stayed faithful to what you knew in the quiet. And now, I want you to stop here. Right now, wherever you are, however you are watching this, I want you to stop and feel the weight of what I just described. 6 rounds. Each one designed at exactly the level required to find the specific fracture point in you and press against it. Round 1 tested whether you had roots beneath the feeling. Round 2 tested whether you could hold your truth against the love of people who doubted it. Round 3 tested whether you could walk without company. Round 4 tested whether you could work without visible results. Round 5 tested whether you could survive hope. Round 6 tested whether you could survive silence. 6 times the question was asked in a different voice, "Are you sure?" And 6 times you said yes. You are not the same person who stood at the beginning of round 1. That person could not have survived what you survived. They were not built for where you are standing right now. The rounds were not gates designed to keep you out. They were a construction process. Every pressure point that was applied to you was also reshaping you, reinforcing you, building in you a capacity that could not have been taught any other way. You were being made into someone who could carry what is on the other side. And now you are here. Round 7. Every test before this one had something in common. They all came from outside you. People, circumstances, results, time, silence. All of it external. And the skill you built through 6 rounds of that, the grip, the hold, the refusal to let go, is real. It is extraordinary. It is what brought you here. But round 7 does not come from outside. Round 7 comes from within. This is what nobody tells you at the gate. This is what the 99% who made it this far still fell against. Not because they lacked strength, not because they lacked dedication, but because they walked into round 7 carrying the same weapon they had used in every previous round. And round 7 is the one test that weapon cannot win. Round 7 is the final argument of the old self, the version of you that was built in the years before you understood what you were, built by the world's limitations, shaped by every wound, conditioned by every time your hope was punished, every time your openness was used against you, every time you reached for something and your hand was left empty. That self built walls. Not out of weakness, out of intelligence, out of pattern recognition. The walls kept you alive through things that would have destroyed you without them. But now the walls have become the obstacle, because what is waiting on the other side of round 7 does not come through force. It does not reward the grip. It requires something that the old self does not know how to do. It requires you to open. I am going to show you exactly what that means in part 2. And I am going to share something specific, something built by a researcher who spent years studying the exact shift that round 7 is asking for, that I believe arrived in your path precisely now, at this moment, when you are finally ready to receive it. Part 2 is already there. Go now. Welcome back. If you are here, if you followed from part 1 to this moment, I want you to notice something before we go further. The act of continuing, the choice to keep watching instead of scrolling away. That is not a passive thing. That is round 7 in motion. The old self that would rather move toward something easier, toward distraction, toward the comfortable noise. You chose not to follow it here. You made a small, quiet, significant choice to stay. And that choice is exactly what this part of the video is about. Let us go deeper into what round 7 actually is. I told you that round 7 is an internal test. That every round before it came from outside people, circumstances, silence, and that the skill you built through surviving them was the skill of holding, of gripping, of refusing to let the external world pull you off the path. I want to talk about what that grip has done to you, because it did something necessary and it also did something costly, and understanding both sides of it is what changes everything. The grip that kept you on the path also kept you closed. Not in a bad way, not in a character flaw way, in a protective way. Every time you reached for something and your hand came back empty, a layer formed. Every time you allowed yourself to fully believe, and then the belief was not confirmed, a part of you became more careful, more guarded. You learned to hold the vision at a slight distance, close enough to keep moving toward it, far enough that if it disappeared again, it would not completely destroy you. That is not weakness. That is adaptation. That is a mind doing exactly what minds are designed to do, protecting the organism from repeated harm. But here is the problem. The very thing you have been walking toward your entire journey, the breakthrough, the arrival, the moment when the thing you were made for finally becomes your lived reality, that thing does not come to a closed hand. It does not pass through a guarded frequency. The destination of this journey requires an openness that the protection has been preventing. And the version of you that built the walls, with every intention of keeping you safe, is now the final thing standing between you and where you are going. This is the difference between round 7 and every other round. Rounds 1 through 6 were asking you to be stronger. Round 7 is asking you to be softer in a very specific place, not weaker, not passive, softer. The way a hand has to open before it can receive something. The way a door has to be unlocked before the knock can be answered. And here is where this becomes something more than a metaphor. There is a state the brain can enter, documented, researched, replicated across populations and cultures that neuroscientists describe as gamma coherence. It is not a mystical concept. It is a measurable electrical pattern. And what distinguishes it from the brain states most of us operate in daily is this. In gamma coherence, the separate systems of the brain that are usually working in partial opposition to each other, the analytical and the intuitive, the protective and the open, the known and the reaching, they begin to synchronize. They move in the same direction at the same time. The walls that were built as protection start gently to come down. Not because they are being forced down, because the frequency that built them in the first place has shifted. People who enter this state, whether through years of deep meditation, through specific clinical protocols, through properly designed sound frequencies, they describe the experience with consistent language across backgrounds and beliefs. They say, "It felt like I stopped fighting myself. It felt like the thing I had been trying to reach became reachable. It felt like the person I had always been trying to become was just there, already present, waiting to be inhabited." That is gamma coherence. And that is what round 7 is asking you to access. Now, I want to share something with you. Not as a sales moment. I want you to understand why this matters first, and then I will tell you what it is. A researcher named Dr. Robert Lake spent years studying the pathway into gamma coherence. Specifically, he was looking for a way to access this brain state that did not require years of advanced meditation training or the kind of clinical biofeedback equipment that costs upward of $7,000 for home use or $300 professional sessions. Because those pathways work. They genuinely work, but they are not accessible to most people who need them. What Dr. Lake found is that the brain can be guided into gamma coherence through precisely engineered sound frequencies, not general background music, not random frequency tones. A specific architecture of sound built with the brain's natural resonance patterns in mind, designed to walk the nervous system from its protective, guarded frequency into the open, coherent state, where the things that felt unreachable begin to come into range. He called it the genius song. And I want to be clear about something, because this matters. There are imitation versions of this kind of work all over the internet, cheap recordings that claim to do what Dr. Lake's research actually does. Do not fall for them. The real program, built on real research, is only found at one place, chosenrise.com/song. That is the only source I can point you toward with confidence. Anything that looks similar and costs nothing or comes from a different place is a counterfeit. And a counterfeit frequency does not just fail to help you. It can actively work against the coherence you are trying to build. What the genius song does is exactly what round 7 is asking of you. It does not ask you to push harder. It does not ask you to discipline your way through the wall. It works directly on the nervous system that built the wall, gently, consistently, in a way that the analytical mind does not need to manage or direct. You simply listen. And over time, the frequency does what years of effort alone cannot do. The guarded places begin to ease. The coherence begins to build. The hand begins to open. Here is what the access looks like. The standard entry point for the Genius Song is $49. For the people watching this, the ones who have demonstrated, through 7 rounds of this journey, that they are serious about this in a way that most people are not, there is a viewer rate of $39, not because the $10 is the point, because this pricing was created to make sure that the people who are genuinely ready can actually get here without financial fear being the thing that stops them at the gate. And it comes with something important, an unconditional money-back guarantee, no time pressure, no conditions. If you go through the program and it is not what I described, you pay nothing. Dr. Lake is that confident in what this research produces. Now, let me bring you back to where you are standing. You have climbed further than 99% of the ones who started this with you. That is not a motivational phrase. That is documented reality. Most people quit before round 4. The ones who make it to round 7 are so rare that when they find each other, they recognize something in each other that cannot quite be named. A tiredness with a specific quality to it. A faith that has been tested until the easy parts of it burned away and only the real part remained. You know what I am describing because you have lived it. And now 1 round remains. Not the hardest round in terms of endurance, but the most precise. Because it is not asking for more of what you have already given. It is asking for something you have never quite allowed yourself to give. It is asking you to open the frequency, to let the coherence do what the grip could not, to receive what is already there, already prepared, already with your name on it. And the only thing that has been standing between you and receiving it is the wall that was built to protect you by a version of yourself that no longer needs to be in charge. You have already done the impossible work. You survived 6 rounds that most people cannot even imagine surviving. The final one is not a battle. It is a release. It is the moment you finally put down what you have been carrying, not the vision, not the faith, not the path, but the weight of protection you no longer need. Go to chosenrise.com/song. Find what Dr. Lake built for people who are standing exactly where you are standing. Let it do what it was designed to do. Let the frequency carry you across the last distance. You were chosen before you understood what that meant. You were prepared through every single thing that tried to stop you. And you are here at round 7 because this is where you were always supposed to arrive. The final round is not a wall. It is a door. And you are already holding the key.